Section 7.4, Permutations and Combinations. Before we talk about what permutations and combinations are, we are going to start off with this topic, factorials, okay? So if you look in the box, it tells you what a factorial is, okay? You're going to see an exclamation point, okay? So I know you're used to seeing that only in English, but actually an exclamation point is a mathematical symbol, okay? So it says for any positive integer n factorial is defined to be this quantity, okay? So this is kind of mathy here, okay? So basically, what it's saying, if you have a number n, the exclamation point means factorial, okay? You're multiplying together a bunch of numbers, okay? So basically what you're gonna do is to start, the first number you're gonna multiply together is the number itself. And then the next number that you're gonna multiply is the number minus 1, and then the number minus 2, and then you're gonna keep taking 1 away from the number each time, okay? All the way until you get down to 3 times 2 times 1, okay? So basically, you're starting with the number itself, and then you're going down a number, and then down another number, and then down another number, all the way down to 3, 2, 1, and you're multiplying all those numbers together, okay? So that is what n factorial means, okay? By definition, okay, this is important, by definition, 0 factorial is equal to 1, okay? So let's try some of these, okay? All right, so it says find each of the following, okay? First one, part A, what is 6 factorial? Okay, so when you see that, okay, this means to start with 6, okay, and then go down a number to 5, then go down again to 4, down to 3, 2, 1, okay? So you're starting with 6 and you're taking away a number each time, okay, all the way down until you get to 1, and you're multiplying these numbers together, okay? So the answer is going to be 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Okay, so if you go to your calculator and you calculate this, 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, okay, that's the answer, 720, okay? So here you go. That's the answer there, okay? It's just a number, okay? All right, let's take a look at part B. Okay, so you can get a little bit more complicated here. So here we have a fraction, okay? So your first thought is probably to go and compute 10 factorial and put that in the numerator, and then calculate 9 factorial and then put that in the denominator, and then, you know, simplify that fraction, which is fine, you can do that. But if you're new to this, start writing it out and see what happens, okay? So I'm going to use this blank that I have here as like the separator for the numerator and the denominator, okay? So I'm going to start with 10 factorial in the top, okay? That just means 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, okay? So that's the numerator. And then in the bottom, like I said, this is going to be my separator for numerator and denominator, okay? The bottom is 9 factorial. Okay, so that's going to be 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, okay? So when you write it this way, look what happens, okay? So starting with the 9s, you have a 9 in the top and a 9 in the bottom. 9 divided by 9 is 1. Those cancel. The 8s cancel. So do the 7s, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, okay? So the answer is just 10, okay? Because everything else cancels out. Okay. All right. So let's try another one. Okay. So let's take a look at part C. Okay. This time it's 10 factorial divided by 7 factorial. Okay. You can do the same kind of thing we did in part B. Okay. So let's go ahead and write out 10 factorial again. So 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Okay. In the bottom, we're going to have 7 factorial. Okay. And notice to make this easier when I cancel things out, I am going to start below the 7 here. Okay, so 7 factorial is 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Okay, so now we've got 7 divided by 7 is 1. The 7s cancel, as do the 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. okay? So the answer to this is going to be, you're left with 10 times 9 times 8, okay? So if you go to your calculator and you figure that out, okay, so 10 times 9 times 8, okay, that is, again, 720, okay? So let's go write that down. All right. So moving on, okay, to part D, okay. So this time we have a single factorial in the numerator, 5 factorial, and in the bottom, that is 0 factorial times 3 factorial. Okay, so we're going to keep both of those in the denominator. Okay, again, let's start in the top. Okay, so 5 factorial is 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Okay, the bottom, okay, 0 factorial is defined to be 1. Remember, we talked about that in the box at the top of the page. Okay, 0 factorial is 1. And then we're going to have to multiply that by 3 factorial. Okay, 3 factorial is 3 times 2 times 1. Okay, so if we simplify this, okay, we see a 3 in the top and a 3 in the bottom. Those will cancel. 2's will cancel. 1's will cancel. Okay, so you're left with 20, 5 times 4, which is 20 in the numerator, and 1 in the denominator. And so the answer is going to be 20. Okay, all right, last one. All right, so this time we're going to do 20 factorial divided by 3 factorial times 17 factorial, okay? All right, so let's start. In the numerator, it's going to be 20 times 19 times 17, or oops, I cannot count. I missed 18. All right, so let me go put 18 on here. So 20 times 19 times 18 times 17 times, and I'm not going to write all these out, okay? I'm just going to put, I'll do one more, and then I'll do dot, dot, dot. Eventually, we'll get to 3 times 2 times 1, okay? You can have really large numbers involved in this. You can even have 99 factorial, okay? So you don't have to write it all out. Just put a dot, 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 okay? All right, so that's the numerator, 20 factorial, okay? In the bottom, we've got 3 factorial times 17 factorial. 17 is the bigger number, so I'm going to start with that one. And remember, when I want to position it so it's easy to cancel out. So I'm going to start under the 17. Okay, so 17 factorial is 17 times 16 times 15 times 14, and then again, dot, 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 all the way till you get to 3 times 2 times 1. Okay, so that's 17 factorial. But then remember, I also need to put 3 factorial. I need to multiply by that in the denominator. I'll put that in a different color. 3 factorial is 3 times 2 times 1. Okay, and that is again multiplied by 17 factorial. Okay. All right, so now we look for stuff to cancel. Okay, we have a 17 in the top and 1 in the bottom. They cancel, as do the 16s, 15s, and so on. Okay, all this stuff cancels out. Okay, so we are left with 20 times 19 times 18 in the numerator. The denominator is 3 times 2 times 1, which is 6. Okay, and then I'll go and figure out what 20 times 19 times 18 is. Okay, so that is, let's see here, 20 times 19 times 18. Okay, so you're going to have 6,840 in the numerator. Okay, and now we need to divide this by 6. Okay, and that will give us our answer. Okay, so 1,140 is the answer to this particular factorial. Okay, so there you go. Okay, all right, so that is what factorial notation means and how you work with some of these examples. Okay, the reason we are talking about factorials, okay, before we go on to permutations and combinations, is because, like I've mentioned before, permutations and combinations, it's another way of counting. Okay, so permutations, it's basically a formula, and there's also a formula for a combination. You just have to be able to recognize your problem as a permutation or a combination, and then you apply the formula. The formulas for both permutations and combinations involve factorials. Okay, so that's why I wanted to make sure you understood what a factorial was before we moved on to this, and see the formulas for both permutations and combinations. Okay. One last thing I'll mention before we start in on permutations and combinations, okay, there is, like I said, you can get really crazy with your numbers. You can't get too high because it'll be just too gigantic of a number, but there's a lot of multiplication involved, especially if I gave you something like 50 factorial, and typing that into your calculator can be a pain in the behind, okay? So luckily there is a factorial button on your calculator, so let me show you how to do that. Let's try part A, that if we punch in 6 factorial, we should get 720. So let me pull up the calculator here. Okay, so here we go. If you have your calculator, let me clear this out. Okay, what you're going to do, so say we want to do 6 factorial. Okay, so punch in 6. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to go to the math button. Okay, and you're going to move it over. See across the top you have math, number, complex, probability, and fraction stuff. See these arrows right here? You're going to move your arrows over until you get to probability. Okay, and if you look at option 4, it's option 4 on my calculator. If you have a different calculator, I can help you find this button. But option 4 under the probability menu is the exclamation point or the factorial notation. So I would hit 4 for that. And now I see 6 exclamation points. That's 6 factorial. Hit enter, and there's 720. Okay. So you're welcome to use that. Again, if you were doing, one of the more complicated ones, like if we were taking a look at part E, for example, if we punch this into our calculator, so if we did 20 factorial divided by 3 factorial times 17 factorial, you would have to, punch this in accordingly. So let's check this one on the calculator really quick. So again, you would do 20 factorial. So go to math, over to probability, option 4. Okay, so there's the numerator. And then if you divided this, you need to put the entire denominator in parentheses. Otherwise, it will not come out correctly. Okay, so you would do in parentheses 3 factorial, okay, times 17 factorial. Close parentheses, okay? And then you punch that in, you do get the 1,140 like we obtained by hand, okay? All right, so like I said, we will jump to what a permutation and what a combination is now, okay? And I'll introduce you to the formulas, and the formulas will involve factorial notation.